blocked on YouTube in every European country.
He was definitely not an idiot. I mean, you could say lunatic or whatever, but he was not an idiot. And I think a lot of people, we understand a lot more now about PTSD. And I think a lot of people from World War One, Hitler was blinded, and people. I mean, imagine living in trenches for years, like years, dude. That's your life for that part of your life. Like that had to have a huge psychological impact on everyone on both sides. Like no one look. You just can't. Like even like if I could talk about ISIS, I'm not pro ISIS. You know, all my work is against these Wahabi fanatics and stuff. But I will put myself in the other person's shoes and say, imagine you're an Iraqi kid and someone comes up and like beats up your dad in front of you, which is so humiliating and demasculating. And then, you know, the rape, just the torture, Abu Ghraib, seeing, you know, your soldiers, your men stripped naked, humiliated, beaten, Fallujah, firebombs, all these civilians that are murdered. Your leader killed, all that. And then sanctions where you watched 800,000 children starve to death all throughout the 90s. So you're seeing kids with the ribs poking out. You're seeing people die of starvation. Then they come back based completely on lies and blow up your cities and put you back in the Stone Age and ruin your drinking water and, you know, all the things we did to Iraq. And you're say you're like 11 years old and you grow up, by the time you're 18, how do you feel? Especially if you're uneducated on top of that. Are you going to be attracted to an Islamic militant group? You bet your ass. It's like this shit we do has predictable consequences. Of course there's an ISIS. Why wouldn't there be? Look at what you did. You starved all those kids. You raped, you beat, you murdered, you firebombed, you hit them with chemical weapons. What the fuck you think they're going to do? Shake your hand? And I can see, you know, stealing land from Germany after World War One and the Treaty of Versailles and how punishing it was. Why you end up with Nazis. That doesn't justify Nazis or ISIS or anything else. But for fuck's sake, you have to look at it and see like, hey, were they just brainwashed and hate people for nothing out of the blue? Or did something happen first? And God, you just can't say that, can you? You know, like if you hadn't had Gulf War I and you hadn't had all the sanctions and you didn't invade a second time and you didn't put sanctions on Iran and you hadn't covertly supported the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria all through Assad's father's age and then we wouldn't be where we are. If you didn't kill the Gaddafi and hand the country over to Al-Qaeda, there wouldn't be all these African refugees in Europe. Like, they don't understand cause and effect because it's this exceptionalism. That's, you know, the hell with check your privilege. Check your exceptionalism. American and European exceptionalism, they're the ultimate Dendu. Oh, we didn't do nothing wrong. Like, well, yeah, you did. And now Johnny's come home. You know, the boomerang is on its way back. And this is what happens when you bomb and destabilize areas. Like, you know, this is your own Frankenstein. You did this to yourself. It is not cultural genocide. It is cultural suicide because your governments created this mess and your governments sustain this mess. That's a nuanced view. And that does not at all promote any of these terrorist groups, migrants and then raping or anything like that. It's all terrible, but it's also predictable. And that's why you have, not you, but, you know, Europe, the United States, we have to change our behavior and policies if we don't want the backlash. I mean, that's like simple stuff a 3-year-old understands. He hit me. Did you hit him first? Yeah. Well, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Simple.
Right. And that's one thing that I wanted to note as well is on that topic. I mean, it really is, like you said, this American and European exceptionalism. That's why I have no respect, even as a person who could be labeled as an identitarian to a certain degree. I have no respect for people like Richard Spencer's views on imperialism and pro-imperialist sort of policies or the way that he looks at the world. Because
you can bet your ass we're going to have more terrorists from Yemen in the future. after
Right.
what's been done.
Right.
Like,
Exactly. It's no surprise.
sir, you know, but you know what? Some good news is that the Horn of Africa is starting to, not Pan Africanism, but sort of East Africanism. Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, that they're all starting to get along, and they're starting to realize who the enemy is. And so just wait for conflict down there to arise out of the blue. Sudan too. They're starting. I mean, these states have all been fighting with each other all through the 2000, 2006, especially. But there's a bit of unity going on. And why? It's because it's a weird thing. It's because Trump cared about it so little that he assigns people there who have no idea what's going on. So they just assign people. They just kept it's on its like fourth deferral till it gets down to what's the dude's name? Yamamoto, who actually like grew up in Africa and knows what's going on. And we finally have some good policies going on simply because the president doesn't give a shit. So instead of intentionally meddling in their affairs, he's like, whatever. Well, that's the perfect thing government needs to do, is just leave them alone. So it's
Yeah.
all working itself out, finally.
That's one thing that I found kind of, well, I don't know if funny is the correct word to use about it, but the sort of negligible action, so to speak, that was taken in Syria by Trump, the couple of missiles, the Tomahawk missiles that were lobbed over there.
Yeah.
I found that sort of as a way of, like you said, he doesn't seem to give a shit about it. So it's sort of just like, I mean, if you guys have beef, that's one thing. I mean, I'm not going to go over there and kick the guy's ass for you, but I might yell something from across the street. But that's the most I'm going to do for you. I don't know if
Well,
that's
what it did was when Trump was in China when he did that. And what it did was it made his threats to North Korea more plausible to fire on Syria. And it kind of forced the peace process in Asia, and it made China finally accept enforcement and cracking down on black markets in North Korea, which is what got them to come to the table. Whether that was all a plan or not, or Trump was just like, fire some missiles, get the media off my back about Russia, whatever it could be both scenarios. I can see, it all being planned out or just serendipity. Thing is, it worked, in Asia, and it didn't really do any damage to Syria. Like 100 shots spread over 10 targets with subsonic long-range missiles. That all it did was a giant commercial for Syrians' anti-air defense and Russian anti-air defense. That's what it really did.
right, exactly. And yeah, and the further you look into things, like the effect that everything Trump does has, not to say that he isn't sort of owned by certain groups of people, or at least to a degree owned by certain groups.
Oh, he is. The Kushners are in his ear.
Right, exactly. But the more you look into certain things that he does, it does. I've never been a big proponent of the 4D chess argument, but there are some things where you're just like, man, it really feels like he knows what he's doing.
Well, the best thing is like he's so incompetent or inept that he's not even bothering with certain things, which is exactly what government needs to do. It's nothing. That's exactly what government needs to do. Just do nothing, and then let markets work. Like if you quit intervening, things will be better than when you try to do central planning. And it's the stuff he is getting involved with, like Iran and moving the embassy and all. It's a shit fest. But the stuff that he's just ignoring is getting better. And what he does, like on the domestic side, that's good is basically stop doing stuff. Like stop taxing somebody so much. Let's deregulate, which is how it would be anyway if you didn't put the regulation there in the first place, right? So deregulation and lowering taxes is just less government, and it works. And it's like the stuff that's stupid, him putting sanctions on Iran and Russia, that hurts the economy. If he would stop doing that, the government would do nothing at all, right? And just let people trade business to business. It works itself out. But, the more he wants to use government, the worse it'll result. But the more stuff he just quits doing, the better. There are a few roles government needs to do, like enforcing the border. But for all his rhetoric, he's deep